Captain Zara Thulsaran had worn ceremonial Zelathi battle armor exactly 3 times in her military career. Once during her commissioning ceremony, once at the Imperial War Memorial dedication, and now, during the historic joint military demonstration between the Zelathi Empire and the Human Coalition on the neutral station Harmony Point. She'd forgotten how much she hated it. The armor was a masterpiece of traditional craftsmanship. Purple-tinted alloy plates inscribed with ancient warrior marks, fitted to her body with the precision that only master armorers could achieve. It was also approximately 300 years out of date in terms of practical design, held together by mechanical locks and pressure seals that required intimate knowledge of Zelathi engineering to operate. Zara had been standing in formation for 2 hours during the demonstration, showcasing various military techniques and protocols to an audience of dignitaries, officers, and media representatives from a dozen species. Everything had gone perfectly. The demonstrations were flawless. The speeches were inspiring. The symbolic exchanging of honor guards between human and Zelathi forces was moving and historically significant. Then Zara had tried to move after holding a formal salute for the closing ceremony, and discovered that something in the armor's lower back mechanism had seized completely. She couldn't bend, couldn't sit, could barely breathe deeply without pain shooting through her torso. The armor had locked around her body like a vice, the ancient mechanisms failing catastrophically at the worst possible moment. "Captain Thulsaran, are you all right?" General Korzeth asked in Zelathi as the formation began to disperse. "Yes, sir," Zara replied through gritted teeth, maintaining rigid posture because she literally had no other choice. "Just adjusting to the armor." This was a lie. She was trapped, paralyzed in ceremonial gear that was supposed to symbolize Zelathi military prowess and had instead become a prison. As the other officers filed out, heading to the reception where they'd continue diplomatic mingling in more comfortable attire, Zara remained frozen in place. She tried to reach the release mechanisms along her spine, but the armor's design required flexibility she no longer had. Each attempt sent sharp pain through her back and shoulders. "Problem, Captain?" Zara turned her head, the only part of her body that still moved properly, to find a human officer watching her with concern. She recognized him from the earlier briefings. Lieutenant Commander James Reeves, one of the Human Coalition's military engineers assigned to Joint Technology Assessment. He was tall by human standards, with dark hair slightly too long for regulation and gray eyes that seemed to miss nothing. He'd been part of the team analyzing Zelathi military equipment for potential integration with human systems. "No problem," Zara said automatically. "Just taking a moment." James raised an eyebrow. "You've been standing in that exact position for 15 minutes while everyone else left. Either you're really committed to meditation or something's wrong." Zara's pride warred with practicality. Pride said to dismiss the human and figure this out herself. Practicality pointed out that she'd been trying to figure it out for 15 minutes and was trapped in increasingly painful armor with no solution in sight. Practicality won. "The armor has malfunctioned," she admitted. "The lower spinal support mechanism has locked. I can't reach the release switches, and I can't move enough to access the emergency disengagement sequence." James moved closer, his expression shifting from concern to professional assessment. Can you show me where the mechanisms are located? In theory, there are 3 primary release points along the spine and 2 secondary releases at the hips, but they require simultaneous activation in a specific sequence, and I can no longer reach any of them. Zara's voice was tight with pain and frustration. And before you suggest it, I cannot simply remove the armor piece by piece. The locking mechanism means everything is interconnected. If we force it, the internal pressure could cause serious injury to whoever's wearing it. Yeah, I read the technical specifications during our equipment review. James circled around behind her, studying the armor's construction. This is old Dynasty design, right? Pre-integration with modern safety systems. Yes, ceremonial equipment is maintained in original condition for historical authenticity, which suddenly seemed like the stupidest decision in military history. Okay, I think I can help, but I need to get pretty close to you. Is that acceptable? Zara hesitated. Zelathi personal space norms were different from human ones, and she barely knew this man, but she also couldn't stay locked in this armor indefinitely. Yes, do what you need to do. James moved directly behind her, so close she could feel the warmth radiating from his body. I'm going to touch the armor now. Tell me if anything I do causes pain. His hands settled on her shoulders, fingers tracing the seam lines of the armor with surprising gentleness. Zara forced herself to breathe steadily, ignoring the strange intimacy of having someone so close, working with such focus on her immobilized form. The first release should be here, James murmured, more to himself than to her. His fingers found a recessed panel near her left shoulder blade. But it's not responding. The mechanism is corroded. When's the last time this armor was actually used? Approximately 15 years ago, according to the quartermaster. Fantastic. So we're dealing with failed lubricants, possible metal fatigue, and centuries-old engineering that wasn't designed for long-term storage. But James's tone wasn't critical, it was analytical, working through the problem. All right, standard release isn't going to work. We need to reset the locking mechanism before we can disengage it. How? By applying counter pressure to the seized joint while simultaneously releasing the adjacent segments. It's going to feel weird, and you need to tell me immediately if it hurts. Define weird. Like someone's pushing and pulling your armor in different directions at once. James's hands moved to her lower back, positioning carefully. Ready? No, do it anyway. James applied pressure, his movements precise and controlled. Zara felt the armor shift, metal grinding against metal. There was a concerning creaking sound, then click. That's one, James said with satisfaction. 2 more to go. He worked methodically, moving around her body with professional efficiency. His hands found release points, applied pressure, made adjustments. Each successful release brought a small measure of relief, but also an uncomfortable awareness of how vulnerable she was in this moment, completely dependent on a stranger's expertise. You're good at this, Zara observed, needing to fill the silence. I specialized in equipment failure analysis, James replied, working on the second release. Spent 2 years studying why military gear fails under stress conditions. Turns out ceremonial equipment that sits in storage for decades is particularly prone to catastrophic malfunction at precisely the worst moments. Thank you for that reassuring observation. You're welcome. Another click. That's 2. 1 more and we can start removing plates safely. As James moved to the final release point, His arm had to reach around her torso, bringing him even closer. Zara found herself acutely aware of his proximity, his scent, something clean and distinctly human, and the careful gentleness of his touch despite the mechanical nature of the task. "Almost there," James murmured. "This last one is tricky because it's partially blocked by the chest plate. I need to reach under it slightly. Is that okay?" "Yes." His hand slipped into the small gap between armor and her uniform beneath, fingers searching for the hidden mechanism. The touch was impersonal, clinical, but Zara felt heat rising in her cheeks nonetheless. This was absurd. He was helping her. This was a mechanical problem, not click. "Got it!" James pulled back, triumph in his voice. "Okay, the locking mechanism should be reset now. Let's start removing plates before anything else decides to fail." The process of removing the armor took another 20 minutes. Each piece had to be carefully disconnected, supporting the adjacent sections to prevent sudden pressure changes. James worked with methodical patience, occasionally asking Zara to shift her weight or adjust her stance as mobility gradually returned. When the final plate came free, Zara nearly collapsed. Her muscles, locked in rigid position for so long, suddenly had to compensate for the armor's absent support. James caught her, his arms steadying her. "Easy," he said softly. "Your body needs a minute to readjust. Just breathe." Zara leaned against him, hating her weakness but unable to stand unsupported. Her back was screaming, her shoulders ached, and every muscle felt like it had been through combat training. "This is humiliating," she muttered. "This is normal physiological response to prolonged immobilization," James corrected. "Give yourself some credit, Captain." "You stood in locked armor for over 2 hours without complaining. Most people would have been panicking after 15 minutes. Most people wouldn't have been stupid enough to wear 300-year-old armor without checking the maintenance logs first." Fair point. But there was amusement in his voice. "Can you stand on your own, or do you need a few more minutes?" Zara tested her balance, finding her legs would support her if she concentrated. "I can stand." James released her carefully, staying close in case she faltered. Zara turned to face him properly for the first time in almost an hour, really looking at him. He'd shed his formal uniform jacket at some point during the armor removal, his sleeves rolled up to reveal muscular forearms. There was a smudge of metal polish on his cheek, and his hair was even more disheveled than before. He looked nothing like the polished officer from the ceremony. He looked, Zara realized, kind and patient, and genuinely concerned for her well-being. "Thank you," she said quietly. "I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't helped. Probably stood there until someone on your command staff realized you were missing and sent a search party." James's smile was warm. "Though that might have taken hours, given how intense that reception is getting." Zara glanced at the chronometer, shocked to realize nearly 3 hours had passed since the ceremony ended. The reception would be in full swing, and her absence would definitely have been noted by now. "I need to attend," she said, then looked down at herself. Her uniform beneath the armor was soaked with sweat and wrinkled beyond redemption. Her blonde hair had escaped its careful styling and hung in damp strands around her face. She looked like she'd been through combat, not a diplomatic ceremony. "You need medical attention and rest," James countered. "Your back was supporting improper weight distribution for hours. You should be checked for muscle strain and possible nerve compression. I'm the senior Zelathi officer present. I can't just..." You can't effectively represent your people when you can barely stand. James's tone was gentle but firm. Let me contact your command staff. They can cover for you at the reception. You need to take care of yourself. Zara wanted to argue. Every instinct screamed that duty came first, that showing weakness was unacceptable, that she needed to push through and maintain appearances. But James was right. She could barely stand. Her back was on fire, and the thought of spending hours making diplomatic small talk while hiding her condition was overwhelmingly exhausting. All right, she conceded, but I'll contact my staff myself. You've done enough. I'll escort you to medical first. Make sure you actually go instead of trying to push through this. I'm not that stubborn. James's expression was skeptical. Fine, I'm exactly that stubborn, Zara admitted, which is why having an escort is probably wise. They walked through the station's corridors together, moving slowly to accommodate Zara's stiff muscles. James maintained a respectful distance but stayed close enough to assist if needed. Other personnel passed them, offering curious glances at the disheveled Zelathi captain and her human companion, but no one interrupted. "Can I ask you something?" James said after a few minutes of silence. "Yes. Why ceremonial armor? It's beautiful, historically significant, and apparently a mechanical death trap. Why not adapt it? Modernize the safety systems while maintaining the aesthetic?" Zara considered the question. Tradition, primarily. The argument is that modifying ceremonial equipment dishonors those who wore it in the past. That maintaining original specifications preserves our connection to history. Even when that history includes design flaws that can injure people, apparently, that seems counterproductive. It is counterproductive, Zara agreed. But try telling that to the Ceremonial Preservation Council. I made that suggestion 3 years ago and was told I was disrespecting our warrior heritage. James was quiet for a moment. For what it's worth, I think your warrior heritage would be better honored by ensuring modern warriors can actually function in the equipment they're required to wear. Something about his matter-of-fact delivery made Zara laugh. A real laugh, not the polite diplomatic chuckle she'd been producing for days. You know what? You're absolutely right. And I'm going to make that argument again, loudly and repeatedly, until someone listens. Good. And when you do, mention that a human engineer had to rescue a senior Zelathi officer from her own ceremonial armor. That should add weight to your argument. Or completely embarrass me in front of the military council. Probably both. James's smile was unrepentant. But if it means the next person who wears that armor doesn't get trapped, it's worth the embarrassment. They reached the medical bay, where a surprised Zelathi doctor immediately began fussing over Zara's condition. As James turned to leave, giving her privacy for the examination, Zara called out to him. "Lieutenant Commander Reeves?" He turned back. "Yes, Captain. I owe you a debt. In Zelathi culture, that's not a casual thing. When someone provides crucial aid in a moment of genuine need, it creates obligation. I don't need. I know you don't need anything, but I'm offering anyway. Dinner, perhaps, tomorrow evening. I'd like to properly thank you. And honestly, I'd like to know more about the human who somehow knew more about old dynasty armor mechanisms than most Zelathi engineers." James's expression shifted, surprise giving way to something warmer. "I'd like that. Dinner sounds good. Excellent. I'll send you the details once the doctor clears me for normal activity." After James left, The doctor tusked over Zara's strained back muscles while administering treatment. You should have called for assistance immediately when the armor malfunctioned. I know. Pride can be dangerous, Captain. I know that too. But Zara was smiling despite the lecture, because something had changed in those hours of paralysis and rescue. She'd started the day trapped in armor that represented tradition, duty, and the weight of expectations. She'd ended it free, thanks to a stranger who'd seen past protocol and rank to simply help someone who needed it. And in the process, she discovered that sometimes the most significant changes came not from grand gestures or formal ceremonies, but from small moments of genuine human, or human and Zelathi, connection. Tomorrow, she'd return to being Captain Thulsaran, senior officer and diplomatic representative. She'd attend meetings, fulfill obligations, maintain the careful balance of military professionalism and cultural sensitivity. But tonight, she was just Zara, grateful for rescue and unexpectedly looking forward to dinner with a human engineer who'd taken her armor off piece by patient piece, and who'd somehow made her feel more herself than she had in months of diplomatic performance. Sometimes, she reflected as the doctor's treatments eased the pain in her back. Being paralyzed by tradition was the perfect opportunity to discover what freedom felt like. All it took was someone willing to help remove the armor, one piece at a time.